Does the thought of starting to clear your clutter overwhelm you? Get control of your clutter so your clutter doesn't control you. Reclaim time, money, sanity, and resources. Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out supports you in clearing your clutter. I'm a professional life organizer, author, certified life coach, and the host of the popular podcast and YouTube series, Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out. The book has 21 standalone chapters to fit your schedule and lifestyle. Topics include clutter kryptonite, the just becauses, feel your feelings, gossip girl, clearing your space, and more. You may not even be aware of all the clutter in your life. When you become aware of your clutter, you can take action to release it. Stop being afraid, gain clarity, and go at your own pace. The present moment is your point of power to change. Ready to share your gifts with the world? Get a free MP3 meditation to release clutter with purchase of the book. You can order from Amazon or directly from me at reawakenyourbrilliance.com. Don't forget to check out all my books, including my Got Clutter 365 Journal Prompt series. Come on, let's get started.